Well, in a first, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held meetings with Government of India's secretaries this evening in a bid to directly interact with them on crucial policy issues in order to speed up decision-making. Manmohan Singh did not hold any such meetings directly with top bureaucrats, and today none of the ministers in fact were asked to be present either. It's a style of functioning that is clearly unique to Mr. Modi and his PMO, which is driving policy at every level. Rahul Srivastav, my colleague, has more on that story. Rahul, we understand that the secretaries were also asked to make presentations to the Prime Minister. What more can you tell us about this unique meeting?
Really, Raisina Hill is buzzing with a new paradigm as far as governance is concerned. What we can say is that this is the first of sorts, as you have said. Never before in the history of India, a Prime Minister has dealt with bureaucrats, 77 top Indian bureaucrats sitting together with the Prime Minister alone without their mantris. At one time in India, if a bureaucrat would deal directly with the Prime Minister, it would hurt the egos of a mantri. But this is perhaps a different kind of effort which is going on. What we can say is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi in this meeting has first talked about his governance formula. One, how there has to be less government, more governance, how the delivery mechanisms have to be improved, how the integrity quotient has to be improved. And Nidhi, also very importantly in this, if you look at the last few years, there has been some kind of distrust between the elected representatives, the executive and the bureaucracy. Narendra Modi's attempt in this meeting, as top sources in the PMO are saying, is basically to build bridges and trust with the bureaucracy. Now, there is an argument that why should a Prime Minister deal directly with the bureaucracy? But some people in the PMO and in the government are very clearly saying that Narendra Modi, it seems, is going step by step. First, he created super ministries. He removed large number of ministries and created clusters of ministries to improve efficiency. After that, he removed the GOMs and the EGOMs, which was delaying decision making and reducing the powers of the ministry. Ministries were empowered. So this effort to meet the bureaucrats cannot be, is not a contradiction in isolation. Yeah. What we are hearing in this meeting, there will be more interaction. Narendra Modi talking about what he plans, taking input from bureaucrats. I think then after that, after this session which is on right now, there will be a larger meeting in which each department will be giving certain specific presentations based on a SMS which was sent by the Cabinet Secretary earlier.
It's clearly a completely different style of functioning from what we have seen in the last 10 years in particular. Rahul, thanks very much for that. We have Shailja Chandra, the former Chief Secretary of Delhi and former Secretary to the Government of India, here in the studio with us. Also Vikram Singh Mehta, the Chairman of Brookings India, Akar Patel, Senior Journalist. Nalin Kohli continues to stay with us, and from the Congress we're joined by its spokesperson, Mr. Rashmikant. Let me ask Ms. Chandra first, how do you see this move of the Prime Minister to directly be meeting secretaries in the way that he is? Is it something that you think will make governance more efficient and speed up decision making?
Certainly, it would, because it is absolutely something unprecedented that the Prime Minister is meeting not just one or two secretaries. That was quite normal, but to be meeting all of them across the board, I think you would get a very fair idea of the interdepartmental issues. He would get a tremendous idea about the priorities that are seen and which are not being attended to. And I think a direction from the top is what the bureaucrats need. It's not that they don't know how to do it, they're competent enough to do it. But in a state government, you work in a watertight compartment. It could be public health, it could be education, school. But in the Government of India, everything spills over onto another ministry. And therefore, if there's a direction given that this is what we want done, I think bureaucrats will not only feel encouraged, but they will start finding answers. They will start using the phone. They'll start dropping in and getting their problems solved.
So this is a move you think that will empower the bureaucracy to be more efficient and to get things done?
Because they know they'd be answerable, and not answerable in that big brother kind of a way. There would be an answerability where you would have to explain why things are not being done, and you would have to foresee for yourself. There are many solutions which you can find entirely on your own, and I think the bureaucrats would be encouraged to do that, and it's a move which I think is unprecedented, and it's I really think it's a very good thing.
So as a former bureaucrat, you strongly welcome the move. Akar Patel, you've been following Mr. Modi's style of functioning, his governance model in Gujarat very closely, and now here at the centre. The critics say, and the Congress in particular says, that he is concentrating too much power in the Prime Minister's office. So one, by directly interacting with the bureaucrats; two, by removing the empowered group of ministers and GOMs and so on. There's just too much power concentrated in the PM's office. Would you say that that's a legitimate concern, or actually he's just getting rid of the red tape that we often see in this country that stalls decision making?
It's the style that he's familiar with. This is how he operated in Gujarat. He undermined the ministers. I think when he says minimum government, maximum governance, he speaks about minimum government on the elected democratic side. He doesn't reduce the number of bureaucrats. He's very comfortable working directly with the bureaucracy. His style is not to read files, and this is what he says himself, and he's quite proud of the fact that he's ignorant of the depth of many issues. He asks for PPT presentations, 5 or 10 minutes, takes a very quick decision based on that. This has shortcomings. About 12 days ago, the Supreme Court said he had shown no application of mind in the most important terrorist case in Gujarat's history. So it does have its drawbacks. On the positive side, it gives very quick results. Bureaucrats love it, as we just heard. The fact that ministers are kept away from meetings and bureaucrats are seen as the solution to all the problems of India, being able to deliver. They love it. Mr. Modi loves it. The elected don't really like it. The MLAs from the BJP didn't like it in Gujarat. I'm sure the MPs from the BJP will not like it in Delhi.
You sound very skeptical. You use the words, he undermined his ministers. So you feel it's an undermining of other
If you look
authorities.
at his style, Nidhi, there are certain ministries that he is really interested in. If you look at the ministers of state in this cabinet, well, they're not in the cabinet, they're outside of it. Power, coal, energy, industry, these are the sort of things that he likes to personally take care of. These are kept outside the realm of the senior ministers, exactly the way that it was in Gujarat. There he had Saurabh Patel, deputy minister, and a bunch of bureaucrats who ran this. Very quick decision making, very flashy style. Whether or not it gives results in Delhi, we'll have to see. I'm saying that in Gujarat, the case is not black and white. That if you look at the Supreme Court judgment, you look at many other cases, quick decision making doesn't necessarily mean good decision making.
Okay, quick decision making doesn't necessarily mean good decision making. Vikram Singh Mehta, I'll bring you in on that. How do you see it then? Do you, Aakar Patel seems to be giving both sides of the picture, or would you welcome, cutting through the red tape, essentially?
I would welcome it unequivocally. The essence of governance in India rests on 3 pillars: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The Prime Minister is the chief executive of the country. The bureaucrats are executives who are responsible for implementing policies that have been determined by Parliament, by the legislature. Now, over the last few years, one of the big lacuna, one of the big gaps in our country has been the absence of bureaucratic decision making. Most bureaucrats have, in a sense, abdicated their responsibility to implement policies for fear of either the CVC or the CBI or the CAG or some sort of a sanction. What we do need now is purposeful political and executive leadership. And what I find in what the Prime Minister is doing is to, in effect, combine this purposefulness. He's the head of the political party. He's also the chief executive. By consolidating powers in his hands, he is going to be able to cut through some of the core issues that have held back critical economic decisions, whether related to inflation, whether to do with manufacturing investment or public and private investment in manufacturing, whether to do with energy subsidies. These issues have really held back economic growth. The dilemmas that the politicians have faced over the past years between good politics and sensible economics have almost always been worked out in favor of populist politics.
Those concerns,
and that is one reason why we are facing a fiscal deficit.
So do you dismiss those concerns about over-centralization of power with the Prime Minister's office? You think that those are unwarranted concerns?
Yeah, I don't dismiss any concerns. I mean, clearly at the end of the day, we have to wait and see whether this form of government will lead to a kind of democratic autocracy. But what I'm really saying is that if we do not have at least this purposefulness through our politician and our executive, we are not going to break through the logjam that we have faced over the past few years. We have to, for example, sort out our fiscal deficit. We can't do that unless we resolve the dilemma between scaling back the subsidies on energy and also meeting the needs of the public for affordable and reliable fuel.
You're saying
we
difficult
cannot
decisions
handle
have to be taken decisively
unless we sort out the issues related to agriculture.
Okay, so let me take this to the Congress party. Mr. Rashmikant.
Unquestionably, I mean, that is the whole point.
Yeah. So, Mr. Rashmikant, when the Congress expresses concern about over-centralization of power or too much power with the Prime Minister's office, what really is the concern here? Because many Indians today see this as, you know, cutting through the clutter in a sense. You know, your government became famous for dragging its feet, for not taking decisions, for having projects worth thousands of crores being stalled as a result of that indecisiveness. Here, what Mr. Modi seems to be doing is the complete opposite of that. Why is the Congress seeing it as over-centralization in a negative way? Maybe it's just decisiveness.
For the simple reason that we are a parliamentary democracy, and in parliamentary democracy the Prime Minister is the first amongst the equals, and after that comes the cabinet ministers. This is a direct, no holds barred insult to cabinet ministers. Anybody from the joint secretary onwards to the additional secretary, special secretary or the secretary of a government will tomorrow say that, hey, I don't need to go to a cabinet minister, I can go to the Prime Minister directly. So this is a dictatorship, this is an oligarchy which is happening, and the ministers are rendered useless. At best, the ministers can be called as the cabinet secretary of their ministries. This is not parliamentary democracy at all. And the fact of the matter is that parliamentarians are chosen by the people of India, and they are responsible to the people of India. The bureaucrats are not. They do not go and stay in villages. They do not go and understand the problems of the people. Will Mr. Narendra Modi go and ask the bureaucrats to go for 6 months to villages, stay there, understand the problems? Will he ask them to go and stay in small towns? Will he go and ask them to stay in hospitals?
But isn't it also true that by setting up GOMs and EGOMs, empowered group of ministers, you just sat on decision making for a very long time? That also cost this country. I mean, you took parliamentary democracy to a totally different meaning.
Well, let me give you an example that happened today itself. That Ms. Uma Bharti was asked to look after the Ganga project, and she has got 5 ministries involved with her to look after the Ganga project. What is this? This is just another name. You removed the name, the empowered group of ministers, but this is a group of ministers talking about the cleansing of the Ganga. So what are we talking about? You are just taking the name EGO out. After all, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was a very seasoned politician and an administrator. He was the one who started it, and they have done a very good job. To say that the EGOM stop it is wrong. Why did Ms. Uma Bharti then involve 5 ministers, not cabinet ministers?
I will take that to Nalin Kohli. Nalin Kohli, the Congress is using very strong words, calling this an oligarchy, a dictatorship, and saying that this is not parliamentary democracy. And even Vikram Singh Mehta says he wouldn't dismiss the concerns that people have, but he's certainly willing to give this a chance at the moment. Nalin Kohli.
Well, Nidhi, this may take a few moments because there are many points involved. So let's get down straight to each one of them. The first, of course, is that I don't think anyone out there should really be predicting Mr. Modi's style of working, for especially those who may not have worked with him. Anything that will be a prediction, he's a different, and that's why he's today the Prime Minister of India. He's not based on a model that has existed at the moment in terms of what we saw in the last 10 years. So let's start looking at each point here. The Congress party speaks about parliamentary democracy and forgets they are at 44 seats because the people of India didn't like what they gave them for 10 years. Because the form of government they gave them, which, let me finish, Mr. Kant. Mr. Kant is very rude to be interrupted in between when I've heard you patiently. I hope you would appreciate it.
I'm just correcting you.
No, sir, I said I find it rude.
Okay,
no, sir, let me finish my point.
We have 3 minutes left. Let's use them constructively. Yes, Nalin, yes.
Yes, I'd like to just finish my point because it breaks my flow of thought. So I have to go back to the top. So I'll come back to it again.
I apologize.
The Congress, not a problem, sir. It's not personal. No, sir, no need for apology. Just I want to finish my point.
Okay, let's move on.
Absolutely not.
Yes, let's move on.
That was very Lucknowi, if I may say. However, coming back to the point, the Congress party is down to 44 seats in Parliament because primarily the model of governance they gave to the people of India, the people didn't like. Now, policy paralysis is not a creation of the BJP. It's what industry and it's what every policy person called that government for. What is the model of governance they gave when they're talking of parliamentary democracy? A young vice president, that is Mr. Rahul Gandhi, had the ability to call an ordinance of the government rubbish while the Prime Minister was on foreign soil, term it fit enough to throw it into the dustbin. And that, of course, is democracy for you.
Absolutely.
So I think, let's not get into words. Let's not talk about oligarchy. We have seen the outsourcing of the Prime Minister's authority to the party president. We've seen a super constitutional authority called the NEC run policy, whereas the Prime Minister seemed to be functioning as a subsidiary to the party. It didn't work. So let's stop. Now, Mr. Modi is the Prime Minister. He has every right to see how he can get this country out of price rise, corruption, rising prices, economic decline, all these issues.
More democratic.
Hold on.
Yeah.
No, it's not democracy, because that is, I mean, at the end of the day, if the Prime Minister could have overruled a young member of Parliament who's never been a minister, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who for 9 years was a silent spectator in Parliament, but in the 10th year, through a press conference, interrupted it, tore an ordinance, called it rubbish. If that's a model of governance, I'm sorry. We certainly, I can assure you one thing, one sentence, one last thing, anything that I can assure you, the BJP may look at policies that are good for the country, which may be in continuum, but certainly we are not going to emulate the Congress's model of governance that this country has seen.
Akar Patel, does Nalin Kohli have a point here about the style of functioning of both leaderships? That is it, in a sense, a fallacy that the Congress was more democratic in its approach when it came to decision making and the way its leadership functioned? Or, is that a bit of a fallacy as well?
I'd put it this way, the Congress is a private limited company. All the shares are owned by the Gandhi family. There is no internal democracy. I think their behavior is quite shameful. The BJP is more public limited. If Mr. Modi had lost the polls the way that Rahul Gandhi had lost them, he would not be in the place where he is today. He would have been out of the party or on the fringes of the party. So I don't think we can really compare the two. But we are discussing the style of a man's functioning. I'm saying that for somebody to take charge of the union government in the way that Mr. Modi has, refusing to read files. These are his words. He doesn't read files. Main files nahi padta. To depend on bureaucrats to give him a briefing. He is dependent on other people to give him information or misinformation, however the case may be. To be able to decide very quickly on the basis of PowerPoint presentations, complex issues on the economy, strategic affairs, foreign affairs, are these safe things? Dictatorship, autocracy, these are words. I'm saying as a nation, we should worry about having our decisions taken in this arbitrary, I think, and very quick manner. EGOMs may have been rubbish and slow, but they thought things through, sometimes at least. At the moment, you've got decision making happening as it did in Gujarat. And I'll just repeat the words of the Supreme Court. No application of thought. This is what was said of Mr. Modi's decision making.
Shailja Chandra
no
for the last word.
One
second, Shailja Chandra, on that, as a bureaucrat and someone who supports this move, how do you respond to Akar Patel's concerns and consultation?
I don't think he is aware of how government works. Once the minister has to give approval on a file, the minister is responsible. That can't be brushed aside. By Prime Minister taking meetings, it only helps to unravel the interdepartmental you might say knots which have been tied together. Second issue is that when a Prime Minister takes him, I don't think any Prime Minister sat and read files. If they did, it will be impossible to run the government.
Okay,
you
so
have little slips, you
him.
have very senior officers briefing you verbally, you have PowerPoints, you have little slides given to you. It is not at all difficult for a person who's intelligent and receptive to listen and get on with it. You don't have to read files.
I have to leave it at that today. Very interesting days ahead as we watch more and more about how Mr. Modi and his government will function in their new role. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us on the program tonight. That's it on the show this evening. We'll see you again tomorrow. Do join us then.